Welcome to the dark. I collect stories people don't want to tell. Some are real. Some should have stayed hidden.
Right now, there's a very good chance that thousands of people, maybe even you listening right now, are paying premium, top-tier rent to live in a luxury 42-story high-rise.
Oh, absolutely.
Specifically, we are talking about a building called Ashcroft Towers. And this place, I mean, it has it all.
Right, the pristine marble lobby.
Yeah, breathtaking views of the city skyline.
Yeah.
And they have an elevator that, like a lot of buildings, just completely skips the 13th floor.
Which is pretty standard, honestly.
It is. But the people who truly understand what happens inside Ashcroft Towers, they don't avoid the building because it's abandoned.
No.
They don't avoid it because it's some crumbling, quarantined, haunted house with boarded up windows on the edge of town.
Right.
They avoid it because it is fully operational. It is a hub of everyday, mundane life, and it's actively hunting the people who live there.
It really is the absolute definition of an active, populated trap. And, when you look at the source material we're going to examine in our deep dive today, that's what makes this so incredibly unsettling.
Yeah.
We like our threats to be visible. We like them to be categorized, right? Like rotting away in a forgotten asylum somewhere.
Exactly. Something you could just choose not to walk into.
Exactly. But this is happening while people are checking their mail in the lobby or, ordering takeout.
So what exactly are we looking at today? Because my desk is covered in a very strange stack of sources right now.
It's a dense stack, yeah.
We've got tenant reports, we've got urban legends, some deeply unsettling security transcripts, and architectural blueprints. What is our mission here?
So our mission is to chronologically unpack the evolution of an architectural anomaly, something known in these sources as floor 13.5.
Okay.
We're going to look at how a seemingly simple elevator quirk evolved step by step into an extra-dimensional space that quite literally swallowed city residents.
But before we get into the disappearing residents, I have to ask the most obvious question.
Sure.
If a luxury high-rise has a supernatural sinkhole inside of it, why on earth didn't everyone just break their leases and move out? I mean, how did people actually live with this?
Well, to understand that, you really have to understand the psychology of modern architecture, specifically triskaidekaphobia.
The fear of the number 13.
Right. In a massive percentage of high-rises around the world, especially in the West, you get into the elevator, you look at the button panel, and it just skips straight from 12 to 14.
Right. Floor 13 simply doesn't exist on the registry.
Exactly. It's a psychological comfort measure. It's basically a white lie built into the physical infrastructure of our cities just to soothe superstitious tenants.
So the residents of Ashcroft Towers just assumed their building was participating in this totally normal architectural quirk.
Precisely. Ashcroft Towers had this veneer of absolute perfection, perfect location, high-end amenities. So the missing 13th floor was just standard operating procedure.
Nothing to worry about.
Right, nothing to worry about. But the anomaly wasn't that the floor was missing. The anomaly was what happened in the liminal space between the floors.
Okay, right.
Because sometimes, late at night, the elevator didn't just skip from 13 to 14. It stopped in the physical geometry of the building where absolutely nothing was supposed to exist.
A floor clearly labeled 13.5.
Yes.
Okay, but if management is constantly denying this floor exists and looking at the early sources they absolutely did deny it, how did we even find out about it? Like, who was the first person to actually report stopping there?
So the first documented report in our stack goes back to 1994.
Okay.
It involves a businessman named Robert Hale, and the setup is classic urban isolation. It's well after midnight, and Robert is riding the elevator completely alone.
Just coming home late.
Yeah. He presses the button for floor 27 where his apartment is, but the elevator begins its ascent. Now, if you know anything about the mechanical engineering of a modern traction elevator, they don't just stop casually.
No, they don't.
They are controlled by complex governors and counterweights. They are designed for incredibly smooth, precise alignment with designated floor tracks.
Right. You feel that distinct deceleration when you're arriving at your floor. You know you're stopping.
Exactly. But Robert reports that the car slows down and comes to a complete smooth halt in the lower middle section of the building.
Way below 27.
Far below floor 27. The doors slide open. Now, put yourself in his shoes. Or imagine you're the listener in this situation. You're expecting to see the lobby because you assume the machine just malfunctioned.
Right, that it just sent you back to the ground floor.
Right. Instead, he is looking at a small, unassuming brass sign standing on a tripod right outside the elevator doors. And the sign reads, 13 and a half.
Which is incredibly jarring. But Robert is a logical guy. I mean, it's 1994. He doesn't immediately assume he stumbled into a tear in the fabric of the universe.
No, of course not.
What did he think he was looking at?
His brain attempts to normalize the anomaly. He assumes he's stopped on an interstitial maintenance level.
Oh, right.
Many megastructures have these. They're hidden half floors used entirely for routing heavy HVAC equipment, plumbing mains, electrical conduits. They aren't meant for public access at all.
But a maintenance floor isn't terrifying on its own. It's just off limits. What specifically about this space made Robert actually go and file a formal report?
It was the sensory deprivation of the space.
Okay.
He described looking out into an unfinished hallway illuminated by very dim, flickering lights. The walls were stark, featureless gray concrete, just a long, bare corridor. But the really terrifying detail was the complete absence of anything mechanical.
And that is the part that bothers me in the reports. A high-rise core is essentially the lungs of the building.
Yes.
A maintenance floor should be deafening, right?
It should be incredibly loud. You have massive water pumps pushing thousands of gallons up the tower. You have elevator winding motors. You have industrial ventilation fans just vibrating the concrete.
Just constant noise.
Exactly. But Robert reported absolute suffocating silence. No humming machinery, no vibration. It was completely devoid of the acoustic noise of a living building. It was just dead space.
So he's staring into this dead, silent, concrete hallway. Does he get out?
No, he doesn't. The doors closed before he can make a decision to step forward, and the elevator just resumed its ascent and took him to his actual apartment.
But he doesn't just let it go. He goes to management the next morning, and they tell him it's structurally impossible, that he was probably just tired, which basically forces Robert to produce evidence.
Right.
Because, according to the report, Robert actually took a photograph through the open elevator doors before they closed. He shows management this picture of the brass 13.5 sign sitting in the gray hallway.
And this is exactly where the narrative shifts from a mechanical quirk to an active, hostile entity.
Yeah.
Because the source material notes that 2 days after Robert shows management that photograph, the image completely vanishes from his device.
Wait, hold on. I really have to push back here.
Go ahead.
We are talking about 1994. Digital cameras barely existed. Nobody was walking around with an iPhone in their pocket. Flip phones didn't even have cameras yet.
That's true.
How is he taking a digital photo that can just be wiped like a computer virus? Are we talking about physical film mysteriously altering?
That is an excellent point of clarification, and it's something the sources actually touch on in detail. Robert was an early tech adopter. He was a wealthy businessman.
Okay.
He was carrying an Apple QuickTake 100, which was released right around that exact time. It was one of the very first consumer digital cameras.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it didn't use an SD card. It stored about 8 photos directly onto its internal EEPROM memory.
Okay, so it was digital, but incredibly rudimentary.
Exactly. And that makes the deletion even more bizarre, because a modern computer virus can easily scrub a hard drive, right?
Right.
But to selectively target a specific string of binary code on an isolated, non-networked piece of 1994 flash memory, that requires a level of precision that completely defies software logic. The memory block wasn't corrupted. The photo was simply gone.
Wow. It was replaced by empty digital space. It's almost like an active defense mechanism, like a digital infection. The floor realized it had been documented.
Yeah.
And it basically reached into his camera to delete its own tracks before it deleted the user.
Yes.
But the timeline is the most disturbing part here. If the photo vanished 2 days before Robert himself vanished,
Because he did vanish.
right, so did the floor tag him through the image?
By analyzing this sequence, we established the floor's initial behavioral baseline. In 1994, floor 13.5 is acting as a localized hidden trap.
Okay.
It's not aggressively hunting the general population yet, but it aggressively protects its secrecy. Robert exposed it, so Robert was removed. He disappeared without a trace.
Just gone.
Just gone. But he was just the first. He opened the crack, and, once a crack in a building's reality forms, it usually widens.
Which begs the question, if Robert is gone and management is covering it up, how does this escalate? How do the rest of the residents figure out they're living inside a trap?
Because the sightings became impossible to ignore, other residents began reporting stops at 13.5.
Okay.
And the parameters were incredibly consistent. It only happened after midnight. And it only happened when they were riding the elevator alone.
But the physical description of the hallway began to change, right?
Yes, it was evolving.
Evolving how?
Mm-hmm.
Because we aren't just talking about the unfinished gray concrete anymore.
No, not at all. Witnesses began to report variations. Sometimes the doors would open to the bare concrete Roberts saw.
Right.
But other times, residents reported seeing a fully furnished, high-end hotel corridor with patterned carpets and expensive wallpaper.
Wow.
And in other instances, it was lined with dozens of heavy oak apartment doors.
But why would a supernatural space care about interior decorating?
Because it was experimenting. If we look at this through the lens of predatory biology, it's remarkably similar to a deep-sea anglerfish.
Oh, that's a creepy analogy.
It fits perfectly, though. The anglerfish changes the luminosity and movement of its biological lure to see what kind of prey it can attract. The floor was trying on different architectural manifestations, experimenting to see what would entice a human to step out of the elevator.
The unfinished maintenance look probably terrified people, so they stayed in the car.
Exactly.
But a luxurious hotel hallway,
Yeah.
that might make a tired resident think, oh, I'm just on the wrong floor. Let me step out and find the stairs.
Yes.
That is incredibly insidious.
Mhm.
But regardless of the wallpaper, the sources say every surviving witness during this era reported one consistent, horrifying detail in that hallway.
The inhabitant.
Yes. The woman at the end of the hall, the specific descriptions here are chilling.
They really are.
She's always standing at the very far end of the long corridor where the light starts to fail. She is perfectly still. She is waiting. She is watching the elevator doors, and she is smiling.
But the cognitive dissonance she induces is the true horror here. Every witness vividly remembers the feeling of being watched, and they all perfectly recall the smile.
But nothing else.
Exactly. If you ask them to describe her eyes, her nose, her bone structure, they couldn't. Her facial features were somehow obscured or blurred in their memory, leaving only the distinct, lingering impression of that smile.
That suggests the smile isn't a genuine emotional expression. It's biological mimicry.
Yes.
It's something that fundamentally doesn't understand human anatomy, but it knows humans respond positively to smiles. So it's wearing one like a lure to lower their defenses.
Yeah.
Now, I want to take a second and really imagine the reality of living in Ashcroft Towers during this escalation, just for you listening right now.
It would be a profound psychological burden.
Seriously, imagine coming home from a brutal double shift. It's 1:30 a.m. You walk into this gorgeous, brightly lit marble lobby. It smells like expensive cleaning supplies. All you want is your bed.
That's all anyone wants at 1:30 a.m.
Exactly. But to get there, you have to stand in front of these metal elevator doors and make a horrifying gamble. You have to ride this metal box up into the dark, knowing there is a very real statistical chance that the machine will betray you, slow down, and open onto a featureless woman trying to bait you out of the car.
Your home is supposed to be your ultimate sanctuary, but the daily commute to reach it requires crossing through a hostile, unpredictable environment. It's the ultimate subversion of modern urban security.
But humans are adaptable. When we face a consistent threat, we create rituals to mitigate our anxiety. We invent protocols, and the terrified residents of Ashcroft Towers developed a very specific, whispered set of survival rules.
This is a fascinating sociological phenomenon, actually. Urban legends almost always generate rules. It's the human mind attempting to impose logic on the illogical.
Right.
By defining the parameters of the monster, you create the illusion that you can control your fate. The residents synthesize their collective terror into 4 unbreakable commandments.
I want to break down the logic behind these, because they tell us so much about how this anomaly operates.
Let's do it.
Rule number 1, never enter an elevator alone after midnight.
This is a direct response to the anomaly's targeting mechanism. The floor exclusively manifests for solitary riders. Why? Because it targets isolation.
Okay, unpack that.
In sociology, there's a concept called the herd mentality in urban spaces. We feel anonymous but safe in crowds. A group of people in an elevator introduces too many variables, too much collective consensus reality anchoring that physical space to the normal world.
I see.
But a single person, tired, late at night, their grip on reality is looser. They are conceptually untethered, making them much easier to pull into an extra-dimensional space.
You separate the weak gazelle from the herd.
Exactly.
Rule number 2, if the elevator stops at 13.5, don't get out.
This defines the physical boundaries of the trap. It implies the elevator car itself functions as a protective threshold.
Right. I equate this to like a diving bell. As long as you stay inside that metal box, you are technically still within the physical architecture of Ashcroft Towers. The diving bell is keeping the pressure out.
I like that analogy.
But the hallway of 13.5 is the deep ocean. The second you step across that gap, you've left the diving bell without a pressure suit. You belong to the ocean.
That is a perfect way to put it. You are safe until you voluntarily forfeit the protection of the building's infrastructure. Which brings us to rule number 3. If someone entered the elevator from 13.5, do not speak to them.
Now, this shifts from physical boundaries to supernatural ones. Why is talking so dangerous?
In almost every piece of cultural folklore, whether it's the Fae in Celtic mythology, vampires in Eastern Europe, or demonic entities in theology, verbal communication is a form of currency.
The currency, okay.
Yes, speaking to an entity grants it acknowledgement. It validates its existence within your reality. If you speak to whatever boards that elevator, you are inadvertently offering an invitation. You are initiating a protocol that says, I perceive you, and we are now engaged in a transaction.
And once the transaction starts, they have leverage over you.
Exactly.
Which makes the final rule the most terrifying and the most specific. Rule number 4, never tell them what floor you live on.
Of all the things an entity could ask, why the floor number? Why is that the ultimate taboo?
Because in a massive skyscraper, your floor and apartment number isn't just mail routing. It's your exact 3-dimensional coordinate in the hive. It is the designated safe zone that legally and conceptually belongs to you.
Right.
So if this is a transaction, giving them your floor number is a metaphysical contract. You are giving this entity the coordinates to your soul, basically. You are saying, this is where I sleep. This is where my defenses are completely down.
You are verbally surrendering your spatial rights. If you give them the address to your sanctuary, you are giving them permission to follow you there, bypassing the protective barrier of your front door.
Exactly. It's an irrevocable mapping of your reality onto theirs. Now, whispering these rules to your neighbor in the laundry room probably felt comforting. It made the residents feel prepared.
But a theoretical protocol is entirely meaningless until it encounters a live variable. And we have a piece of evidence in the sources that proves these rules weren't just paranoid folklore.
They were necessary.
They were the absolute baseline for survival.
Right. So we move from the era of rumors to hard, undeniable documentation. This brings us to a college student named Mia, and the incident we'll refer to as the ghost in the machine.
Mia lived in Ashcroft Towers, and her experience is incredibly critical because it wasn't just a personal anecdote.
Right.
It was captured on the building's internal security systems, providing us with an objective, third-party perspective on the anomaly's behavior.
So walk us through the setup that night. Was Mia doing something wrong to trigger this?
No, she was just living her life. It's 2:11 a.m. She's coming home late. She enters the main lobby elevator. The crucial factor here is that she is alone.
Breaking rule 1.
She has instantly, unwittingly broken rule 1, but she's just a tired student. The surveillance camera in the upper corner of the elevator captures her leaning against the wall, casually scrolling on her phone. She is completely unaware that she has met the criteria for an encounter.
The elevator ascends. Everything is normal. And then the digital display on the panel glitches. The car slows down and the doors slide open. Mia looks up from her screen, and she is staring directly at the brass sign for floor 13.5.
According to her subsequent report to security, the hallway matched the abandoned variation.
The gray concrete.
Yes, it was dim concrete, perfectly silent, and initially, it was completely empty.
The sources place massive emphasis on the timing here. The door stood open to an empty hallway for 7 agonizing seconds. I want the listener to actually count that out in their head.
It's longer than you think.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Other than just standing
In a
there.
brightly lit box, staring into a dark, impossible abyss, waiting for the heavy metal doors to slide shut.
The psychological tension of that delay is immense, because at the end of those 7 seconds, the doors do not close.
No.
Instead, someone steps out of the shadows of the corridor and enters the elevator with her.
But it's not the smiling woman at the end of the hall. The anomaly is changing its tactics.
Yes.
Mia describes a woman wearing a plain gray dress with dark hair falling forward, obscuring her face. Her head is lowered. She steps into the elevator car, doesn't look at Mia, doesn't say a word, and just stands perfectly still in the corner.
And then the doors finally close. The elevator resumes its ascent. The display ticks upward. 14, 15, 16.
I can't even imagine.
Think about the physical space here. A standard residential elevator is roughly 6 by 6 feet. Mia is trapped in a tiny rising metal box with an entity that just boarded from an alternate dimension.
And as they pass the 16th floor, the ultimate test begins. The woman in the gray dress doesn't move a muscle, but she speaks. And she asks me a very clear, very direct question.
Yes.
She says, "What floor are you from?"
It is a direct, calculated assault on Rule 4.
Mia is instantly thrust into a life-or-death pop quiz. She remembers the whispered rules. So she does the most difficult thing a human being can do in that situation.
Which is ignore her.
Right. When a stranger asks you a polite question in a confined space, thousands of years of social conditioning demand that you answer. It feels aggressive to ignore them, but Mia bites her tongue. She stays completely silent.
The entity is fishing for the invitation. It is probing the perimeter of her defenses. When Mia doesn't answer, how does the entity react?
It doesn't get angry. It doesn't scream or attack her. The sources say the woman just repeats the question, but she asks it softer, more patiently. "What floor are you from?"
Which is infinitely more terrifying. It's a tactic of disarming gentleness.
Yeah.
It's trying to coax her into feeling a false sense of obligation to slip up just to relieve the unbearable awkwardness of the silence.
But Mia holds her ground. She stares at the floor until the elevator chimes at floor 18. The doors open to her brightly lit, normal hallway, and Mia sprints out of that elevator without looking back. And the woman in the gray dress never follows her, because Mia never gave her the conceptual key to exit.
She survived because she respected the threshold in the transaction protocol.
But Mia is terrified, naturally, and the next morning she goes straight to building management. She demands they pull the surveillance tape. She wants to know who this woman in the gray dress was and how she got into the building.
And this is where we experience a profound ontological crisis. The security team pulls the digital file from 2:11 a.m. They queue up the video. They watch Mia enter the elevator. They watch the car stop. And they watch the doors open to the empty hallway.
The security guards are staring at the monitor. The video clearly shows Mia standing in the elevator. The doors open, and nobody gets in.
Nobody.
The camera shows Mia standing completely alone for the entire ride up to the 18th floor. Visually, there is no woman in a gray dress.
The camera's optical sensor simply registers empty space.
But then they turn on the audio playback. And playing over the speakers in the security office, echoing in the room, is the sound of the woman's voice, clear as day. "What floor are you from?"
Over and over again.
The video shows Mia looking terrified at an empty corner while the audio perfectly captures the interrogation. So I ask you, does this mean the woman wasn't physically there, or that the camera simply couldn't perceive her? How does that work physically?
That is the crucial question, and it requires us to look at the physics of closed-circuit television.
Okay, let's unpack that.
A video camera uses an optical sensor, like a CMOS or CCD chip, to capture photons, which is light bouncing off physical objects. If an entity doesn't reflect light, the camera is blind to it.
Right.
But a microphone uses an acoustic diaphragm. It captures mechanical waves, the actual physical displacement of air molecules.
So you're saying the woman wasn't reflecting light, but she was physically displacing the air in the elevator car to create sound.
Exactly, which means she possessed a physical density, a weight in the real world, but she operated on a visual wavelength completely outside the spectrum of human technology.
Wow.
Let's trace how much the anomaly has evolved here. Think back to 1994 with Robert Hale. The floor's interaction with technology was a blunt instrument. It just deleted the photograph. It wiped the memory block.
A brute force cover-up.
Right. But now, years later with Mia, it has grown far more sophisticated. It's no longer just deleting data. It has learned to manipulate the gaps in digital memory. It is allowing its voice to be recorded as a deliberate escalation of terror.
Yeah.
It wants to be heard, even if it refuses to be seen. It's taunting the building's security infrastructure.
It's basically saying, your cameras can't protect you. Your technology is useless against me. It fundamentally changes the reality for the residents. You can't trust your eyes, and you can't trust the screens protecting you.
No, you can't.
Mia survived because she stayed inside the diving bell and she kept her mouth shut. But if this thing is evolving, what happens when someone doesn't follow the rules? What happens if someone breaks the most important rule of all and steps out?
Well, that exact scenario triggered the most severe escalation in the history of Ashcroft Towers. The carefully balanced ecosystem of avoidance began to collapse.
Right, the era of disappearances.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Robert Hale anymore. A sudden wave of vanished persons hit the building.
A massive wave.
Delivery drivers dropping off late-night food, night shift nurses coming home at 3 a.m., visitors leaving parties. Anyone who rode that elevator alone after midnight was at risk.
Anyone.
The floor became an active, ravenous sinkhole within the building's infrastructure. The police were baffled, apartments sat empty, and the building management was in crisis mode.
Most of these people vanished without a trace. But the true nature of the space was finally revealed because one person came back.
Just one.
The only documented survivor to ever physically enter floor 13.5 and return to tell the tale. A man named Victor Lane.
How was Victor found? Because I know he didn't just walk back into his apartment.
Victor had been missing for 9 full days. The police had completely exhausted all leads. And then one morning, the concierge finds Victor sitting on a sofa in the main lobby.
Just sitting there.
He is barefoot, he is visibly shaking, and he is entirely mute. The psychological trauma he endured was so profound that it shattered his ability to verbally communicate. He remained in a catatonic state for weeks.
But eventually, he writes down what happened to him. And his account is what blows the doors off this entire legend. Because we have to compare Victor's experience to Mia's.
We do, yes.
Mia experienced an auditory, highly contained haunting. The entity came to her, but she stayed in the box. Victor's account states that when the elevator stopped at 13.5, he broke rule number 2. He stepped out. He crossed the threshold.
And the moment he did, the doors closed behind him, and the elevator simply ceased to exist behind him. He was trapped.
And the physical space he describes is nothing like what Robert Hale saw.
No, not at all. Robert saw a small, unfinished gray hallway, but Victor stepped into an architectural nightmare. He described an infinite corridor.
He writes that the hallway stretched forever in both directions. It was perfectly straight, and it vanished into a hazy, distant vanishing point.
Which implies a massive use of non-Euclidean geometry.
Exactly, a space that is infinitely larger on the inside than the physical boundaries of the building should allow. And lining both sides of this infinite hallway were doors. Thousands and thousands of heavy wooden doors.
But these were not standard apartment doors. Victor specifically noted the numbering system engraved on the brass plates.
If you walk down a normal hotel hallway, the numbers go in a logical sequential order, right? 401, 402, 403.
Sure.
But the doors Victor saw were marked with single digits or entirely random double digits. He saw a door marked 4. Next to it was a door marked 22, then 31, then 7.
He realized very quickly that these were not apartment numbers, they were floor numbers.
But Ashcroft Towers only has 42 floors. So why are there thousands of doors? Let's unpack Victor's realization here, because this elevates the story from a simple ghost story to a profound psychological critique of urban living.
Victor realized that these doors did not represent physical rooms in Ashcroft Towers. They represented individual people.
Each door belonged to a specific human being.
Yes. The numbers on the doors, the 4, the 22, the 31, indicated the floor that the specific person lived on or belonged to in the physical world.
Oh, wow.
This wasn't just a localized trap for one building anymore. This extra-dimensional space was acting as a supernatural database. It was an infinite registry cataloging every resident, every visitor, and every missing person in the entire city.
It's a bureaucracy of souls. That is so deeply terrifying because it's not a mindless monster just eating people. It's an administration.
Exactly.
If you think about how massive city registries work in real life, tax rolls, property databases, census data, we are all just numbers filed away in massive servers. This floor simply mirrored that reality. It created an infinite warehouse where human beings are permanently filed away in their designated, numbered compartments.
It weaponizes the cold, dehumanizing concept of urban density.
Yeah, it does.
In a massive city, you are already filed away in a little box stacked on top of thousands of other little boxes. The anomaly simply made that conceptual filing system literal and eternal.
And the ultimate horror for Victor comes after hours of wandering this endless hall. He's passing door 18, door 3, door 41, and then he stops because he finds a door that doesn't just have a floor number. It has his exact Ashcroft Towers apartment number engraved on the brass plate.
It is the architectural manifestation of his own doom. His place in the registry has already been prepared.
Victor is staring at a door with his own apartment number on it. And driven by God knows what kind of morbid curiosity, he reaches out and touches the brass handle.
That's a terrible mistake.
And the moment his skin makes contact with the metal, he hears something. From the other side of the door. From inside his designated room, he hears 3 knocks.
Slow, patient, waiting.
Okay, I have to stop here. That makes absolutely no logical sense. If Victor is standing in the hallway, who or what is knocking from the inside? Is his own demise already in there waiting for him to open the door and join it?
That is the purest form of existential dread.
It really is.
The knocking implies anticipation. Whatever is inside isn't trapped, it's expecting him. It is the sound of absolute inevitability. The room was custom made for his soul, and the occupant is simply waiting for him to finally check in.
It's like the Grim Reaper isn't a skeletal guy with a scythe. The Grim Reaper is a hotel concierge with a meticulously organized ledger, tapping his pen on the desk, waiting for you to pick up your key.
That's horrifying.
It is. Victor didn't open the door, though. He ran.
The trauma likely blocked the memory of how he actually escaped the dimension and ended up in the lobby. But his account ends with one final devastating detail.
Right. As he was running back toward where he thought the entrance was, he looked down the endless corridor. And standing in the distance, at the hazy vanishing point of the hallway, was the woman. The smiling woman.
But she wasn't just waiting anymore.
No. Victor noted that she was holding a clipboard.
She was checking off names, actively assigning rooms as new victims arrived. Victor escaped her registry, but his testimony fundamentally changed the residents' understanding of the anomaly.
They finally knew what the floor was doing.
Right. It wasn't just a glitch, it was a machine. And it had a quota to fill.
Which leads us to the final, physical convergence. For years, the anomaly existed purely as a metaphysical threat, an extra-dimensional space that overlaid the physical building. But in 2011, the barrier between the two finally broke down.
Yes, the physical world caught up to the supernatural one.
In 2011, Ashcroft Towers suffered an electrical fire. It wasn't a massive inferno, but it was severe enough to damage a significant portion of the internal walls in the lower middle section of the building.
Enough to require major repairs.
Right. Firefighters and structural engineers had to come in. They had to tear down the drywall and expose sections of the building's load-bearing skeleton that hadn't seen the light of day since the concrete was poured decades ago.
And behind one of those sealed walls, deep inside the central core of the building, they found something that defied all architectural logic and structural engineering.
What exactly did they find? Because you can't just hide things in a building's core.
They found an elevator shaft. An entirely extra, completely hidden elevator shaft.
Unbelievable.
It was not on any of the original architectural blueprints. It wasn't connected to the main elevator banks. It had no doors opening onto any of the standard floors. It was just a massive, empty, vertical concrete throat plunged right into the dead center of the building.
A hidden shaft. How do you even construct that? A load-bearing elevator core is the strongest part of a high-rise. You use slip-forming concrete. It's the spine of the building. You can't just accidentally build a void.
You can't. And the depth of it was the true impossibility. Structural engineers dropped laser sensors down the shaft. It didn't just go down to the basement or the sub-basement parking garage.
Where did it go?
The lasers couldn't find a bottom. It descended into absolute darkness, plunging hundreds of feet beneath the concrete foundation of the building, straight down into the bedrock of the city. A void carved into the earth that no construction crew could have realistically excavated without massive citywide disruption.
It's as if the building grew the shaft itself.
Yeah.
Like an organic architectural tumor manifesting inside the concrete spine to accommodate the extra dimension.
Precisely. It proved that Ashcroft Towers wasn't just a passive host to an external ghost. The physical structure of the building was complicit. It was warping physical reality to accommodate the metaphysical weight of the floor.
The city, obviously terrified of the structural implications, ordered the shaft sealed immediately. They didn't just put up caution tape, they brought in welders. They poured wet concrete over the access points and welded heavy industrial steel plates over the opening. They tried to physically put a lid on the nightmare.
But you cannot use physical engineering to contain a supernatural breach. The source material notes that 3 days after those heavy steel plates were welded into place, the workers returned.
No.
The welds were broken. The steel plates, which would require thousands of pounds of pressure per square inch to warp, were bent and torn open from the inside.
Something came up the throat. The shaft had reopened by itself. The machine was still running.
It was hungry. And that hunger leads us directly to the final chilling climax of the Ashcroft Towers legend. The final recorded sighting of floor 13.5.
This happened shortly after the shaft was discovered. It's the graveyard shift. 3:03 a.m. A maintenance worker is riding the main elevator alone, doing his rounds. And we know the exact timeline of his final moments because he was carrying a two-way radio connected to the central security desk.
Right.
The transmission was recorded.
Investigators eventually released a heavily redacted transcript of this recording. The fragments we have outline a terrifying progression.
You can hear his confusion first. He radios in, his voice calm but puzzled. He says the elevator stopped. There's a burst of static on the line.
He is experiencing the classic onset of the anomaly. The governor has halted the car.
Right. Then the radio clicks again. This time, his voice is completely shifted. The confusion is gone, replaced by a sudden, sharp spike of absolute terror. He says the floor sign changed.
More static.
He's looking out the doors. He's seeing the brass sign, but something is deeply wrong.
And then comes the final transmission.
The worker whispers into the mic. His voice is trembling. The source describes a shaky, ragged breath echoing over the radio. And these are his final words, words that nobody in the building ever forgot. He says it doesn't say 13.5 anymore. He pauses. Now it says 14.
The transmission ends. The worker disappears, becoming the final name checked off the clipboard.
Let's really analyze the magnitude of that final quote. Now it says 14. Did the floor round up? What does that signify in the grand scheme of this anomaly?
It signifies completion. If we look at the entire narrative progression of this legend, from 1994 to 2011, it is a story of terrifying methodical growth. It started as an unfinished anomaly, just gray concrete and dim lights, a nascent pocket dimension struggling to form in the building's infrastructure.
Like a rough draft of a trap.
Yes. Then it grew. It generated furnishings to bait the residents. It manifested an inhabitant. It escalated to manipulating digital memory with Mia's camera and the security footage.
Yeah.
Then it revealed its true massive scale to Victor, an infinite registry, an endless bureaucracy of doors. It was building something. It was accumulating mass.
It was accumulating people.
Exactly. And when the maintenance workers saw the sign change from a fraction, 13.5, to a solid whole number 14, it meant the gestation period was over.
Oh.
The fractional space had solidified. The extra dimension had gained enough density. It had consumed enough victims to render itself mathematically and physically permanent.
The terrifying conclusion presented by the sources is that after that night at 3:03 a.m., sightings of the fractional floor ceased completely. The glitch in the elevator never happened again. The doors never opened to an empty hallway. The residents probably thought, oh, thank God, the missing floor finally vanished. The haunting is over.
But that is the ultimate misdirection. The extra-dimensional space didn't vanish. It simply stopped appearing because it no longer needed to hunt. It had fulfilled its purpose.
It stopped appearing because it had finally become fully occupied. The infinite registry was full. The woman with the clipboard had checked off the last name. Every single room behind every single wooden door in that infinite hallway had a resident inside, knocking from the other side.
The trap was full.
It didn't leave. It won.
It is a breathtakingly grim resolution. It takes the typical ghost story, where the spirit is exorcised or the haunted house is burned down, and turns it into a story of absolute mechanical victory for the anomaly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we need to bring this back to reality. We've gone on this massive journey from a quirky 1994 elevator glitch to a fully operational infinite warehouse of souls that successfully met its quota.
Right.
But why does this specific legend hit so hard? For the listener who is sitting at home right now, maybe in a high-rise, why does Ashcroft Towers feel so deeply, personally unsettling?
I believe it resonates so powerfully because it preys on a very specific modern psychological condition, urban isolation. We live in a world of unprecedented population density.
We do.
Millions of us are stacked on top of each other in these massive concrete and glass towers. We share walls, we share ventilation, we share elevators. Yet, despite being physically surrounded by thousands of people, we have never been more isolated.
It's the vulnerability of the crowd. You can ride an elevator every single day with 50 different people, and you will never know their names, their fears, or their lives.
Exactly. When you are alone in an elevator late at night, suspended hundreds of feet in the air, dangling by a steel cable in a narrow, dark concrete shaft, you are entirely cut off from the human herd.
Yeah.
You are surrounded by hundreds of sleeping people behind closed doors, yet you are completely, utterly alone. The legend of Floor 13.5 weaponizes that exact feeling. It takes the liminal space of our daily transit and turns it into a predatory hunting ground.
It makes you realize that the walls of your sanctuary are terrifyingly thin. You think your apartment is a fortress, but it's really just a numbered box in a massive filing system.
Yeah.
And sometimes the system files you away in the wrong drawer.
It is the ultimate architectural betrayal.
It absolutely is. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Something to mull over the next time you step into the polished marble lobby of a high-rise. Press the button and watch the floor numbers tick upward on the digital display. Based on everything we've learned from the source material, we know that Floor 13.5 stopped appearing at Ashcroft Towers because it finally filled its massive infinite quota. It became a whole, complete floor. It was satiated. But hunger, especially supernatural, bureaucratic hunger, rarely stays satisfied forever.
No, it doesn't.
So if the entity at Ashcroft Towers is finally full, what happens when that same system realizes it needs more space? What happens when it decides it's time to open a floor 14 and a half in the building where you live?